Hi friends, Shannon here. Welcome to another episode of Art Adventure. I got myself set up here on my kayak. I have a small wooden tabletop easel with acrylic paint, brushes, and a collapsible bucket, and most importantly, an umbrella. I'm going to start off with the horizon line. I will avoid putting that in the center, which would make my work look static. And while it doesn't need to be ruler straight, I recommend making it horizontal. A diagonal horizon usually just looks wrong, unless it's very exaggerated. So for water, I prefer to make the base color the darkest water hue, rather than the reflection of the sky, which is much lighter in this case. In a quick painting like this, I'm not going to create a full-blown underpainting, but I will use aspects of this great master's traditional style, focusing on value. So you'll see me lay in the darks and lights prior to detailing. Always start with a fairly wide brush, so that you can stay loose and let the painting do its thing. You can detail with a smaller brush later, but if you begin with too small of a brush, your work might look tight and uncomfortable. The sky gets lighter as it nears the horizon line, and you'll see me make a color gradient into the relatively deeper blue as I travel up the painting. And this will give it atmospheric perspective and make the scene appear to have more depth. I'm using a very wide brush for this step, maybe 1.5 inches wide. I'm relaxing and having fun. I can even use the excuse that I'm bouncing around in the kayak if I don't like the outcome, right? If this inspires you to go out and paint or draw outside of your studio, especially if you're new to this idea, I would love to see a snapshot of you in action enjoying the fun. At the top of the water, I'm going to make it a lighter and more aqua shade. Visually, the sky is starting to blend with the water as our eyes perceive it near the horizon. I'm dropping the mangrove's base color in near the horizon line. Now that the base color of the mangroves and the composition and proportion have been established, I can begin adding a darker hue at the bottom of the mangroves. This is going to demonstrate that the roots are further back and the leaves will come forward, and it'll make the mangroves three-dimensional. Next, I'm adding sky color into the left-hand mangrove to make it look further away. Employing and even exaggerating atmospheric perspective when doing landscapes can make a big impact on the painting. I'm painting a reflection of the mangroves onto the canvas, even though I don't really see the reflection in real life. I know that it will add interest and avoid making the mangrove float. So I love to say I'm using my artistic license here. Don't be afraid to just paint what you feel. When you're building the underpainting and laying out the composition and proportion, you should look at the reference more often than you're looking at your canvas. But as you start getting into the painting, you can take some time and just analyze what's there and what might make it pop. Artistic license. That is what will make your painting different than mine, even if you're painting along. Oh, I forgot to mention that I use salt water to rinse my brushes. What? Yes, I know. Maybe not very professional, but it makes sense to me to use the resources in my environment. Just to be clear, I do not dump the dirty water into the ocean. Nope, please do not pollute nature with residual paint remnants. For those of you who are new to my channel, my purpose is not necessarily to teach you how to paint, although I will throw in some tips for fun. Instead, my purpose is to encourage my viewers to get out there and make art. You can do it anywhere. Given this, the finished product is not the goal. If your finished painting is awesome, cool. If not, so what? The point is having fun creating it. Let's add some cool highlights. I'm going to keep my shadows warm and my highlights mostly cool. I'm just dabbing it on with a smaller brush, for sure, just having fun with it. Splash some of that paint around. Don't get anxious about how precise it is. If you want, you can add meticulous details in your studio later. Often the relaxed, spontaneous paintings look even more exciting. And remember, if you don't like it, paint over it. No big deal. I'm hoping to instill a love for the activity of painting. If you all but ignore the final product, you're getting the idea. And now would probably be a good time to tell you that most plein air artists throw away or paint over at least 50% of their works. I'm talking about well-known outdoor painters who sell their work in galleries. The more they paint, the less they end up tossing. But many will tell you that when they began, they threw away as much as 75%, and that they still throw away about half. Claude Monet, in my opinion, the greatest natural outdoor painter to have ever lived, was known to get frustrated and just throw his canvases out into the field he was painting. Please do not litter your paintings about, but you don't have to be perfect every time, especially if you're just getting started. How to paint water. First, I say that you should think of it more like an abstract painting. First, lay in the darks and the lights. Your strokes should get smaller and shorter and thinner as you go up or go back into space, and this will give the correct perspective. And they will also get less light and less dark, or more desaturated, in other words, more muted, as the water recedes. Make sure that you do not make every stroke the same size, shape, and distance from each other. That is very important because nature does not do that, but it is human nature to organize things that way. So take a minute to stop and look at your water, and if you're inherently making everything too even, go back and switch it up a bit. After you have the main light and dark values, begin to add in colors between them that are a mixture of the two. To begin, just think of it more in terms of a light, a dark, and a couple of in-betweens. Take your time, relax, enjoy, force yourself to release any stress or anxiety, and once you have the 4 values in, you might decide to add some more intermediate values. But before you go adding too much, stop painting. Look away, let your eyes unfocus, calm, and then take a peek at your artwork from a distance. You may be delightfully surprised. You will get too tensed up if you sit on top of your painting the whole time, and that disquiet will manifest itself into your art. You can paint just about anywhere. Lots of you watching have already painted in really cool places. Please share them in the comments. It will make for some entertaining reading. Speaking of painting anywhere, I founded a nonprofit called One World, One Canvas, where I've taken students worldwide to unite cultures through art. Well, in 2016, I took a group to Cuba, and we got to meet Sandora Gonzalez, who paints underwater. Yeah, underwater, decked out in scuba gear. Just a side note, he is careful to make sure his paints will not have an adverse effect on the sea life. But so cool, right? Acrylics, oils, even watercolor can be toxic to nature and the wildlife. So as you do your adventure paintings, please do not dump your byproducts into the environment. Give me a thumbs up if you're with me on this one. I'm adding layers into the leaves. You can keep adding darks and lights, but as I mentioned with the waves, do not make it too evenly distributed. You should have some areas or clumps that are darker and others that are lighter to give the effect of depth, with concentrations of leaves that ebb forward. And remember that the top of your mangroves should not be a straight line like a baseball cap. It should be jagged and rough to depict the leaves. I'm about done painting for today, so let's see what's in the water around us. Visibility is poor. My husband's chilling here in the water. I hung out with a barracuda for a bit, but since the viz is poor, you're gonna have to do like a Where's Waldo search to find it here. Here I'm putting the dirty paint water into a used empty water bottle so I can dispose of it properly and safely later. A few days later, I'm in the studio. I'm gonna add a boat or two in the background to help lead the viewer's eye around the canvas. I want my painting to work like a song. A song needs a crescendo, but it also needs places to rest and repetition, otherwise it's just noise. So I'm using the boat as a point of interest. I am using Arteza acrylic paint, which is inexpensive, but still nice quality paint. If you are not new to my channel, you know that I consider myself to be a traditional oil painter, but I'm playing around with acrylics to paint outdoors in a looser style. Using a medium that is new to me forces me to paint out of my comfort zone and really focus on the act of painting over the final pieces, which is what I hope to encourage my followers to do. If I love it as much as I think I will and continue to go on art ventures, then I will probably invest in some more expensive paint. So follow me and we'll see what happens. See that little plug I added in there to motivate followers? At any rate, Arteza makes great acrylics and they are thick and creamy and opaque unlike other paints in the same price bracket. I'm sanding the paint with Liquitex medium, which makes them behave a little more like oils in that it lengthens the dry time and it enables mixing on the canvas. It also allows for me to make the paint semi-transparent, which is effective in the clouds, for example. I'm reproducing the sky color with white, phthalo blue, and then a smidge of burnt umber to desaturate it, so that the attention will be on my point of interest and not on the sky. Sometimes I put in a splash of cerulean blue, which will warm it up. If you're interested in more information about the temperature of light, let me know in the comments. I love utilizing light and color temperature. I have a close-up of the boat reference, but I don't want to get too tight or detailed in my depiction of the boat. Keeping it loose gives the painting character. I want the viewer to get feelings of my adventure. There are many successful approaches to painting clouds. I usually use white paint with a little tiny bit of sky color mixed in, and this way I can actually use the pure whites for the highlights. Then I stir in paint medium to make the edges of the clouds bleed out to transparent in areas. And I add a shade darker than the sky color into the cloud color for the heavier bottoms of the clouds. And I go back many times, building up layers to the brightest whites. I like to make sure I have overlap in the clouds for depth. Painting outdoors gives the added challenge or thrill of painting within the elements. For example, you may be combating the wind against your canvas or even bugs in your painting. Once I was painting at the Blue Lagoon in Big Pine Key, and I had a key deer walk right up and check me out. It was awesome. Once painting in my kayak, I had to pull under the safety of the mangroves to take cover from a storm that popped up while I was too consumed in my painting to notice its approach. And I had to wait out a water spout that was between me and my home. That painting ended up in drips all over my kayak and had to be discarded. If you're happy with your work, you might want to add a varnish. This will help protect your painting, but it will also make the darks and the lights pop out.